some of the things that we value personally?
For me, it would be respect, collaboration, inclusion.
Yeah, that's great.
Just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah. Why don't we, all of us, see if we can nail 2 or 3? And what I'll do is, in the pack that comes back, there'll be a record of this, and then we can add to that.
Hope, actually. I think that I really feel, everybody should wake up hopeful.
Yep. Other values. Adam, anything to add?
Integrity.
Yep. Laura, Joe, Margaret? Laura, you go first, then we'll kick back.
Probably nature, which is very similar to what Joe was sort of saying before.
Yeah, great. Margaret, another one to add?
I was going to say beauty. That sounds very superficial, but it's more like the aesthetics, and so beauty and quality of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was similar to Adam's. Authentic and integrity. If you're running a business that is good, not only for making an income, but also for the environment or for your local economy, it's got to be a good way of living and being happier, I think.
Learning knowledge.
Yep.
Really important for me.
Probably one of my other ones harps back to what you were saying, Margaret, about equity. Yep. So making sure that we're representative of all of our communities and not just our own interests.
Yeah. So I've got all those down. I'll provide those back as part of the thinking to do for the next session. So what we want you to be thinking about is always continuing to update your view of conditions. That's once you start doing that, you just keep working on it and keep working on it to get a further resolved view. There's a challenge in there, which Elena maybe is more a challenge to Startup Shakeup and to the city, which is, could you catalyze a central conditions piece, right? So you've got that view as a way of as a resource for people to tap into. There's going to be some questions to think about in terms of values. So I'll put this values piece back to you all, and then also to be thinking about how does a focus on opportunity and risk in the conditions enable sustainable value generation. So when you think about where do you focus, it's about how does that align to my values and to our ability to sustain value generation. And then what will be the last piece of thinking to do will be about the journey from conditions to opportunity risk. So conditions provide a context for making decisions, right? So then the more robust that context is, ideally the faster and better your decision-making becomes. And that's really starting to understand opportunity risk. Now, just in very simple terms, I'm conscious that we've only got 5 minutes left. A dictionary definition of opportunity is a set of conditions providing for progress. Risk is a set of conditions providing exposure to danger, right? So why we start with conditions is once you're clear on the conditions, you can interrogate quite rigorously, what do we see as opportunities? What do we see as risks? We join those up as strategic opportunity risk because the opposite side of a risk is usually an opportunity and the other side of an opportunity is usually a risk. And we want people to think holistically about those. So if you're seeing something as an opportunity, you're at least asking the question, are there any risks here that I haven't taken into account? And equally, if you're seeing a risk, the powerful way to deal with risk is to say, what are the opportunities we might choose to activate and pursue based on having seen those risks. So I'll provide a video which explains the opportunity risk theoretical pieces in a bit more detail, so you can watch that as part of the thinking. But the question to ask is, what am I seeing as opportunity? What am I seeing as risks? And where can I see some of those joining up? So in really simple terms, I'm just trying to think of a ready example that we can all relate to. But if we stick to that, the conversation we've been having about growth and people and transition, job skills, etc., in those conditions, there's a risk around we outstrip our ability to deal with the growth. we end up pushing people maybe further into risks around their ability to have sustainable work, sustainable incomes, a sustainable future, and so on. So those are all risks that sit there in those conditions. The opportunity side of that is to say, well, what is it that we could work on in a catalytic way that sets up people for success in a different context and doesn't outstrip our local resource base, so that you sort of cover both sides of that. The other important thing just to reinforce to this group is when you look for opportunity and risk in the conditions, if you can see something there as an opportunity or a risk, it means it's likely genuinely present and others could see it too, right? So the simple business example is the Kodak thing, right? There was an opportunity and a risk around the emergence of digital photography, right? Kodak saw it before anyone else did, and they chose to ignore it, put it away, right? That doesn't make it go away. It just makes it available as an opportunity for someone else, and generally, in a context like that, increases the risk for the organizations that choose to ignore that. Qantas, 5 years ago, saw a pandemic as a risk. Or what, I think we raised this last time, but what's the opportunity on the other side of pandemic that an airline could have been working on for the last 5 years to not end up where it's ended up now? So just seeing something and saying, well, we've seen it, isn't very helpful. Seeing something and saying, what could we actively do about that, is a question worth asking, understanding that the answer might still be, well, it's a risk. We don't think there's anything we can actively do about it now because we don't have the capability or we can't afford it or whatever, but at least we know it's there and we're going to be active around it and not just let it recede into a risk register, which is sometimes what happens.
So this actually then comes back to the conditions that are disruptors. So a condition that is a disruptor becomes a risk, becomes an opportunity.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, right.
And a condition that's exactly right. It's just, we put some language around this which enables people to think through it. But what you've just said is reality. Conditions are what they are, and they all represent opportunities and risks. What we're trying to do is, in an ordered way, make sense of the complexity that's there so we know where to focus. But if you do a really robust conditions map, every condition potentially represents an opportunity or risk. When you look at the themes or patterns that start to pop out, that's a way of making sense of maybe a chunkier focus to really be able to prioritize where you're going to invest whatever resources you have. But yeah, that's a bit of a mind bender for people, but it's like, conditions are what they are, and they're all opportunity and all risk. The rainstorm, right? It's opportunity and it's risk. Depends on what you're trying to do in terms of value generation, which is why we'll have that value piece of work as well. That just is what it is.
So David, on behalf of Startup Shakeup, can I say thank you again for a fantastic workshop? Just to let everybody know, the first workshop and the precursor are on the Startup Shakeup YouTube channel. They've been broken down into bite-sized chunks of 15 minutes each. So when you want to share this with others, and I know that there are others who are not in the room today, we'll be doing the same with the one today, we'll send you out the link to that YouTube channel, and people can sit there, have a cup of coffee and watch them one by one.
Yeah, and using the whole of the framework in a very active way is the easiest and best way to get into it, right? You're just thinking, right? Just thinking and sharing the thinking and trying to get a resolved view quickly of where to focus. You can't break it, right? So push it around and see what you discover. It's a way of thinking and making sense and hopefully getting active and being able to do some activation at scale. So can I just say thanks to everybody for joining us today. And for those who weren't able to, this is not something where you have to, if you're not able to come, you have to drop out. It's just a matter of, are you willing to and able to create the space to do the thinking that's required in the world today to make the best of that world.
Right.
Terrific. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll shoot through some follow-up questions and some slides and some links to videos as well. And we'll see you in a few weeks.
Fantastic. Thanks,
Thanks,
David.
David.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
David, thanks a lot.
Thank you.